A very good morning, everyone. My name is Wadad and today I'm here to give talk on context with React 19. Before I tell you what context with React 19, I would first like to tell you everything about context because you see, I believe that context is the most misunderstood tool in the entire React ecosystem. And my job today is to clear all those misconceptions and misunderstandings so that you can understand just how awesome context really is. Let's get started now. So what is context? You see, context is a solution. And to understand this solution, we need to understand what's the problem this solution was created for. So what's the problem? Prop drilling. Okay, over here I have an authentic counter app. Why authentic? Because it has no AI in it. It is clearly made by these authentic hands. And I would request you all to please kind of memorize this code base with me because we're going to keep on optimizing this by the end of the talk. Okay, so it's a very simple code base. Okay, we have an app component. Inside the app component, we have the sidebar and the title, each sharing the count state. And inside the sidebar, we have again display count and reset count. And inside that, you can see that count and set count is getting shared. Over here, then we have the title component. In the title component, we have the heading and the button container. In the button container, in turn, we have the add button and subtract button. Okay, so this is the entire component hierarchy that we have. And as you can see, this is a totally unmintable piece of code. And this has some problems in it. Okay. First of all, if you ever want to create a new component or you want to change the state from a deep nested component, you have to keep on passing that set state function from the top level all the way to bottom, from one component to another, prop to prop. Even if that component is not using that prop, you have to still pass it. And and this is like hell to maintain this, right? And lastly, like if you don't use TypeScript, right? God bless you. So let's see that what context brings as a solution. Okay. For those unfamiliar with the syntax of context, first you have to create a context, and after that you have to provide that for the component. So there's a dot provider property, and you have to pass in the value. Now inside the value, anything can be there. The state, that state, dispatch, function variable, anything that you want these components to have access to, you pass it and wrap it over there. And as you can see, right, no longer we are passing it from the sidebar to display component. We are directly consuming the context with using a hook called as use context, which consumes the context to get us that value, and we're directly using it. As of a result, you can see things have gotten so much simpler, right? Just look at the code. Just look at the code, okay? So beautiful, so elegant, just looking like a wow. So what is context? Context is a dependency injection mechanism. What is not a context? Context is not a state management tool. I repeat, context is not a state management tool. Context is a tool to share data or state across components. Take a breathe in, breathe out. That's not air, that's misconception leaving your body. And now we'll get to the misunderstandings, okay? So I believe that people misunderstand context because they don't understand the rendering behavior of context. And before we understand this, we need to understand what's the rendering behavior of React, right? And for this, right, we have the prop drilling authentic app. And as you can see, I've set up a React scanner to see all the re-renders happening whenever the state changes. And as you can see, right, whenever I change the count state, the entire app is lighting up like a Christmas tree. Why is that, you may ask? That's because we have defined a state inside the app component. And React has a rule, okay? Anytime a parent component re-renders, all the child component re-render recursively. It doesn't matter if the props change, don't change, even if you don't give prop, they will still re-render. And that parent component re-renders, that child will re-render recursively. And context over here will not help you much because you have defined the state inside the app. App will have other components, right? So all of them are going to get re-rendered. And because of this, right, let's have like a simple thing. We'll just take our state management away from this. So let's say I have an apply context component, and inside that component, I have declared the state count and I have wrapped up all the components that I wanted to share. And as you can see that, okay, entire app is not re-rendering, the heading does not re-render. But yes, the circus still continues, all of the app are re-rendering. And why is that? That's because provider is also a component. And when that re-renders, all the child components re-render. That's the reason. For this, we have a very simple solution, okay? We'll use something called as children. So children is a special keyword in React. What it does is that it passes the reference of the components to that component. So at that point, they are no longer parent-child relationship. There are siblings relationship, each unaffected by each other's re-renders. And with this, what will happen? That good. Now, not all the components are re-rendering, but you may still point out, okay, why are the buttons getting re-rendered? Well, that's because context has a rule. Components which consume a context will always re-render. To better explain this, I have an example for you. Over here, we have declared another title state. and we're going to pass it in the value. So context, right, its rule behaves such as that whenever any of the values changes, right, it destroys the value and recreates it, and it forces a re-render in all the components which has consumed that particular context, even if the value has not changed. And to show you live, right, I have over here a heading. In the heading, I have consumed and called the title state. We are not even going to display it. We're just going to let it chill over there. And you can see, right, whenever I'm changing the count state, the heading is also getting re-rendered. Why is that? That's because components which consume a context always re-render. In this particular scenario, that's why what you should always do is that you should always split your context. If you ever see your state is there unnecessarily re-rendering, just split it up, create a new provider, provide it, consume it, and you can see that, okay, the heading no longer re-renders. But yes, the buttons are still re-rendering. What do we do about that? We can't do much because, components that consume a context re-render when any value of the context changes. That, my friends, is the single greatest reason why people hate and blame them. So this is a problem, right? What's the solution for this? Well, these are the solutions. State management library. Can you say what's your favorite one among this? Nice, Redux. I can see you're very experienced folks. Zeus done, okay. So I have a problem with this, okay? My first problem is that every month I wake up, I see a new state management library. And then we have to learn it, what's the differences, how is it different, if you want your team to adopt it, all of them have to learn it, there's a learning curve involved. And most difficult part is that you have to learn how to pronounce their name. Can you pronounce this one? Zustan, na? It's German, it's pronounced as Justan. Will you pronounce it as Justan from now on? Great, perfect, thank you. Now you will understand why I pronounce wheat as white pen. Well, jokes apart, guys, I would like to ask, like, is this really the solution that we have to settle for as a community? Just because a component re-render when it consumes a context, does it mean that we abandon context altogether? Is that really the case? If that's the case, then I would like to ask you all a question on the stage of React Nexus, right? Philosophical question. Are re-renders even bad? Are re-renders even bad? You'll be like, of course, Wadad, the entire Twitter says it's bad. I don't know what the Twitter says. I want to know, do the dogs say that they are bad? We don't know Wadad. We are JavaScript devs. We don't read docs, we write them. Okay, so I'll give you the number one argument why re-renders are considered bad is because of functions in JavaScript, right? So JavaScript, right, since it's a single threaded language, it's, if it encounters a function, it's not going to go to the render block unless and until the competition has finished. And in case it's a very expensive function, it's going to get stuck over there and you're going to see a damn like white block. And I am saying that, okay, that's a bad practice, okay? What you do is that you separate your re-render logic and your expensive function, okay? Maybe, pass it as children or something and you keep your re-renders in simple component. Now, what is a simple component, you may ask? A simple component, in my definition, is a component which, has no React hooks in it, no state updates, no JavaScript function, no logic, no nothing. It's just a simple chunk of div getting re-rendered. And then you may ask, okay, what's the cost of re-rendering a simple component? I have done my homework. According to MDN, right, a website needs to be run at 60 FPS if you want good user experience, especially in case of animation. And if you divide that, right, so one frame, you get like 16.7 millisecond of a budget. Within those time, you need to complete everything, right? Your React re-render, your state update, your DOM manipulation, JavaScript function execution, your DOM layout, everything should be done within 16.7 milliseconds. Okay, and the cost of a re-render, a simple component re-render in React on average is 0.01 millisecond, and worst case is 0.1 millisecond. And the cost of a browser div repaint is always less than 1 millisecond. So you need to understand that in React, your re-renders are never a problem. If you feel that, okay, re-rendering is what causing my app to be slow, no, it's not because of re-renders. It's because those re-renders go ahead and, run all those expensive functions, DOM layout, calculation, state update, React code. That is what causes your app to be slow, not your re-renders. And in React, guys, React re-renders are not your enemy. Re-renders are how React works, right? If it doesn't re-render a component, right, it's not able to create a VDOM. It creates a new VDOM, compares it with the old, checks the differences, pushes the difference on the DOM commit. This new VDOM re-render, this is like 0.01 millisecond on average. This browser DOM update is 6 millisecond on average. So re-renders are not your enemy. When you see a component getting re-rendered only once, perfect, fine, it's beautiful. Leave it alone. Please go solve your Jira tickets. And now we come to context with React 19. So React 19 just brings syntax changes to context, okay? First, we are getting rid of like dot provider. Now you can directly wrap it in context. Why? Because like drop the provider, just context, it's cleaner. And then okay, we have like the use API. So the React 19 use API, right? So now you can use the use API to consume promises instead of the use context hook. And one great thing about this is that now you can conditionally call the context, you conditionally consume this. And you may ask, Wadad, what is great about this? We shall learn it the hard way. Now we come to the React compiler, okay? So React compiler gives a huge boost to context, okay? It's a huge one, okay? I have a simple trick for you. What you do is that when you have a sidebar, right, you keep a simple component and consume your context inside that simple component. And then you pass it as props to the components which actually want to use. So what this happens is that since compiler auto-memorizes all the components, right, it's not going to re-render that component unless the value has changed. And you may ask, okay, well, this is prop drilling. This is not prop drilling. Prop drilling is when you go 4 levels down. This is just, let's say, lifting the state up, all right? And the result of this is very simple, right? The buttons are no longer re-rendering. Then you may point out, okay, but I can see button container display count is clearly re-rendering. Yes, but they are simple components. Simple components have virtually zero computational cost. But I agree this is a compromise, but only for now because React team is working on fixing this. And once they do, they are going to make context great again. And hopefully end all the state management liabilities. We have reached the end of the talk, and I always end my talk with a developer joke because I believe that laughter is very important, especially in this economy. So here I go. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. A PR a day keeps the PM away. Thank you so much, guys. Have a nice day.